So why to study migration? Yeah, and why we need to do so? I would say that, and I guess you agree with me if you came to hear us, that migration is a topic of most heated public and political debates in ever-growing number of the countries. Yeah, there is almost no news program that doesn't mention migration or refugees or asylum seekers. And most of the so-called Western countries or global North countries, if you want to call them this way, are in need of migration because of the aging of their population. And yet, these immigration countries worries about consequences migration brings about ethnic diversity, about impact of migration on economy, on national culture, on national security. Immigration countries worries about brain drain when highly educated citizens of these countries leave their own country and decide to live and work elsewhere in the world. And there are millions of people who are forced to leave their own country because of the violent conflicts or because of the severe economic crisis. Let's, for example, take as example Venezuela. So we know that migration is really important and fascinating and also timely topic. And I would like to give you, to connect maybe migration to two biggest recent events, pandemic and Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yeah, so look into these graphs. Yeah, what you could see here, it's a share of foreign-born doctors and nurses in several OECD countries. Yeah, foreign-born immigrant doctors and nurses and in OECD countries. And now try to think, could this country handle pandemic without this migration? What would happen to this country if these doctors and nurses didn't immigrate to them? How these pandemics would be looking in these countries nowadays? Yeah, when we talk about COVID. So in our program, you will study this relationship between labor market demands of the host society and migration. Yeah, we will try to address this and other questions that related to this professional migration. But in the program, we do not talk only about professional migration. We also talk, for example, about forced migration. Yeah, maybe it's another extreme. Yeah, when we talk about forced migration. And today, when we talk about forced migration, I guess most of us also think about Ukrainian refugees. Yeah, and we could see and about Russian invasion of Ukraine. And we know there's millions of people who are now internally displaced in Ukraine, and there are 6.5 million of international refugees through these 3 months. Yeah, most of them as refugees from all over the world, now residing in neighboring countries. Refugees usually reside in neighboring countries because most of them also want to come back to their home once it became possible. Yeah, and some of them reside in other European countries, in Canada, in US, in Israel. The question that we always want to ask, what about policy? Yeah, how countries, how host country react to refugees, how they can help, can they help refugees? And actually, when we talk about Ukraine refugees, there is something that happened first time in the world, because European Union first time activated temporary protection directive that was formulated in 2001, but first time was activated now in March of 2022. And this directive means that each European Union countries provide residence permit, work permit, health services, children education, and help with accommodation to Ukrainian refugees, at least for a year. Then it could be prolonged until 3 years. Okay, so, and the Ukrainian refugees, for example, have the opportunity to decide in which European Union country they want to reside. Those of us who was interested Yeah, and those of us who were interested in the issue of migration and in the issue of refugees and forced migration and how world help refugees, I guess thinking it seems to be really, really different from what we know in 2015. Yeah, when, for example, refugees from countries in Middle East and Africa were fleeing violent conflict and trying to enter Europe. So why then the reaction was different? Now we see when we talk about Ukrainian refugees, really also welcoming attitudes of host country population, not only in terms of the policy, yeah, but in terms of the action and attitudes of people. Sorry, I am doing mute for somebody, for enter. So we can see, knowing literature and knowledge and research on migration, we can talk about different reasons. We can talk about racism, and this is definitely one of the reasons in our attitudes toward people from different countries and from different part of the world. We can talk about perceived cultural threat, for example, when usually migrants who are closer or perceived to be closer to the country of host countries, host society, receive more welcoming approach than migrants who perceive to be more distant. Another issue is the gender and age composition of this migrants group, because we know that the Ukrainian refugees are mostly women and children, and the share of young men in the population of refugees who were coming from Syria, for example, and Afghanistan was higher, and then they were perceived as more threatening. But there's also another topics, if we go in deeper and if we have this knowledge. One of it that the most vocal countries that were really against refugees who were coming from Middle East and from countries in Africa were actually post-socialist countries in Eastern Europe. But these countries nowadays see the war in Ukraine is a part of their own war, because they know that they could be next with this Russian invasion, and because they know their past, they remember Russian tanks in Hungary and Czechoslovakia. So their attitudes toward Ukrainian refugees absolutely different, because their perception of the situation is different. And then another thing that we were studying here, we know that the previous intergroup meaningful contact always helped to reduce prejudice. So since Ukrainian population were working in Poland and in Hungary and Romania, since there is a families and intermarriage between countries, there was a lot of contact between the communities, and nowadays these post-socialist countries are easier to accept Ukrainian refugees. I was just taking two maybe most recent biggest event that our world dealing with today, and try to connect it to migration, to what we are doing here in the program, and to show you to what extent the migration, the phenomena is relevant, and how important for us to collect this knowledge about migration, also to deal with other important events. So, but now I would like to stress some other aspects of migration that is a phenomena that's really important to our discussion here. And we think that because of the central role that migration plays in lives of so many people in so many countries, and because of its impact of wide range of countries, institutions, and life spheres, migration and migration-related issues at micro and at macro level should be addressed by professionals and the experts in the fields. Yeah, and our program, our main program in migration studies, running since 2012. So over these decades, we gained kind of serious experience in preparing and training specialists in the field of migration and migration-related issues. We are interdisciplinary program that provide our students with the skills and practical experience in the field of migration. Yeah, you will take on board the theories, research tools, as well as professional models and best practices that covers variety of migration topics. Our graduates work in both public and private sectors in a variety of fields with migrants and asylum seekers across the world. And a recent survey of our alumni have shown that majority of students who study this program held migration-related jobs after completing their studies. You can see here just several examples, specific examples where they work nowadays. Some held government jobs and the other were in non-governmental organizations and grassroots organizations. Several of our graduates became entrepreneurs in the field of migration, and yet other pursuing PhD degrees in the university around the world. So you could see here different organizations and companies in different countries where our graduates work today. We are international program, so you will meet and you will study with the students coming from all around the world. You can ask me why you should study MA in migration study at Tel Aviv University, and a part of these obvious reasons that presented here on the slide. I would like also to stress that Tel Aviv University is located in the country that has been built on migration. Yeah, in the total Israeli population nowadays, more than 20% are first-generation international immigrants, and another 25%, another quarter of the population, are daughters and sons of immigrants. So there are different types of migrants: ethnic repatriates, labor migrants, asylum seekers in Israel. And there are different types of migration regime and migration policy toward these different types of migrants in Israel. So this is the place where you can get first-hand experience with variety of migration patterns and study migration in the country that were built on migration. There is some photos of our professors and the field of their study and research that they do, and the field of research that they focused on. And you could see professors from the sociology and from political science and the legal scholars. And we could now go to talk a little bit about the program schedule and the classes. So there's a one-year program, in general, 3 semesters, fall, spring, and summer. We usually study 2 days a week, and it could be a bit different if you decide to take some course not from the program but from other place in the campus. And there's a mandatory classes, elective courses, internship, and the MA thesis optional if you would like to write it. There's also possibility of the student exchange semester, and usually if you want to do it, it would be fall semester of the following year, and you could do it in leading universities around the world via part of the Erasmus and the other student exchange program. In terms of the classes, you could see here a list of most of the main classes, of the core classes in the program. And the courses of the program devoted to international migration phenomena in general and to various types and patterns of migration: settlement migration, labor migration, asylum seeker, global middle class mobility, relocation, repatriation. You will study major theoretical explanation as to why people migrate, and as well as theoretical approach and practical approach to the integration of migrants, and to the way they copy with this movement and the different coping strategy of refugees. There is a class that devoted to citizenship regime in different states, to humanitarian aid, to migrant national and ethnic identities, the political context of international migration, the role of remittances, legal perspective on migration and refugees issues, forced migration and corruption. These only examples of the topic that you will study in our program. So we constantly adjust our curriculum to address dynamic changes in the global migration patterns, and migration is something that is really, really dynamic. So we, from time to time, we try to renew and adjust our curriculum. We also believe that studying this interdisciplinary and international program will also enhance such skills as teamwork, decision-making, solution of the complex problems, and creativity. And one of the maybe definitely major part of our program, major component of our program is the internship within the Migration and Civil Society workshop. And about the internship, I would like Nora to tell us, to ask Nora to tell us. Okay, it's yours.
Sure. So, hello everyone. First of all, I just wanna shortly introduce myself. I'm an alumna from the program from 2014, and I'm now a PhD student going towards the end of my PhD phase in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, where the program is also located in Tel Aviv University. And for the last 5 years, I've been also the teaching assistant to Professor Adriana Kemp, who is giving the Migration and Civil Society workshop. So what are we doing in this workshop? It's a course that lasts for 1 year. And within the first couple of weeks of the first semester, we are going to present you different outlets, different possibilities for internships. For us, the most important aspect is that you really get hands-on experience, that you see how organizations work or how the respective place works. It can be research assistance, it can be in an organization working with the population, it can be in an organization that is doing legal advocacy, for example, writing policy briefs. It can be tutoring with younger populations. We have a wide variety every year, and it's every year a little bit different because it also depends on what the organizations are looking for. For us, the most important thing is that both the organizations and you as the interns really have a synergetic experience, and there is an outcome, and there is a great experience and also something to take from it further on. So after the first couple of weeks where we introduce and where there is also theoretical background on what is civil society, what is the role of civil society in migration, in the field, in migration governance, what are type of organizations, you might know NGOs, non-governmental institutions, civil society organizations, hybrid organizations, organizations that, for example, both work with populations, civil society organizations, and the government. Every of these different types has different implications for their work and also for their strategies. Then at some point you will decide for an internship. If you have an organization in mind that you know because you researched about in Israel, for example, that you would really like to intern with, we are also working on it, that we really help you to find what you want to do, even if it's not something that we offered from the beginning. And then in the first semester, you will do internships for 2 hours per week, which is the minimum that is mandatory. A lot of students also start to volunteer more and start to work more, but there is a mandatory framework, and then those who find themselves immediately sometimes spend much more time in that. And then in the second semester, internships are 4 hours per week. There is constant supervision. We have meetings. We're talking about what is happening. How can we adjust? Students develop their own projects. Students take on projects that are offered by the organization. And lastly, I want to say that a lot of our students that you saw the list before, but also all this information that we present today is on the website of the program, not from Tel Aviv University International, but the dedicated program website. You will find a lot of testimonials from other alumni, and you will also find a list of organizations that we've been working with and that we currently work with. A lot of other students found their jobs through these internships. May it be that they started from volunteering, and then, which is something that happens in the civil society sector a lot, like the transition from volunteering into more professional working in the organizations, or may it be, which is one of our favorite examples, I think, one of the students that studied with me, he opened his own organization. And you know, from there started his career in the field. So obviously after Anastasia will continue. If you have any questions also about the internship, I will be very happy to answer. Thank you.
Okay, Nora, thank you very much. I just show you some technical details about enrollment, about the requirements, but all this information you also have on the website, and what we need from you when you upload your document, what the GPA. So this is a technical dry facts that you could find on the website. We do have some merit-based partial tuition scholarship upon available resources. So some of you who would like to ask for scholarship may do so. We evaluate all the applications and see on different criteria whether we are able to help you with the tuition based on the scholarship. A part of the scholarship that some scholarship that program has, I also would like you to refer to the scholarship, to different scholarship that TAUi International, our program, just provide you information with. Some of you may be eligible for Masal scholarship. There is some scholarship of Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So see, there's also scholarship page for international students. You could maybe find some information and maybe you're eligible for some of this kind of scholarship.